breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
A warmer brotherly hello. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSIN family of podcasts. We've got a tremendous podcast for you as in segment number 2, one of our very own, Danny Burke. He does an amazing job here at the network. He does our hockey betting podcast at VSIN. On top of that, he does an amazing job taking a look at the diamond. You're able to catch him weekends on VSIN doing a lot of our live betting coverage as well. So he is going to be joining me in segment number 2. We're going to be chatting about the Chicago Cubs. We're going to be taking a look at what to expect from their series against the Cincinnati Reds. We're going to take a look at the NL Central and a few games for this MLB Wednesday. And then in the final segment, going to give you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this MLB Wednesday as we touch them all. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter timeline at unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, naming does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter questions today, but going back to the very late games on Monday, we have seen some rambunctious baseball and a whole bunch of overs. So let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
I do oftentimes have to do these recaps a little bit earlier since the Greg Peterson experience on VSIN is from midnight to 3 Eastern time, so I wasn't able to feed you guys some of the West Coast results. But on Monday, we saw the over go 13-1-1 in Major League Baseball, and we saw a lot of West Coast scoring as the Detroit Tigers did take down the Astros on Monday by a count of 7-6. That is a game that wrapped up in 11 innings as the Tigers couldn't hit a broadside of a barn prior to this game. Matt Vierling in the 11th inning goes deep off of Hector Neris for his first home run of the season. Then Riley Green was able to go deep off of Brian Abreu. As for Houston, Hunter Brown, not a great start. 4 runs surrendered over the course of 4 2/3 innings. Then from there, the bullpen did a solid job. Abreu gives up that solo home run over the course of an inning, but you did have a scoreless inning out of Rafael Montero, Ryan Presley, Ronald Blanco. You got out of the bullpen out of Phil Maton, and then Hector Neris gives up 2 runs, one of which was earned in extra innings. As for the Houston Astros, Yordan Alvarez did go deep off of Jose Cicerno as the Detroit Tigers did not get a lot of length out of Matthew Boyd. 2 runs surrendered in 4 1/3 innings. Not terrible, but he's been injured throughout his career, so that was an issue. And then Cicerno gives up that home run, 2 runs in total in 2/3 of an inning. But they got 3 scoreless innings out of Mason Englert to really stem the tide. Alex Lang gives up a run in an inning. Trey Wingenter a scoreless inning, and then Garrett Hill, he comes on in the 11th, gives up that unearned run in the 11th, and the team is able to get it done. You had Shohei Ohtani go deep for the LA Angels for them to be able to get a 7-3 win over the Seattle Mariners as Reed Detmers gave up 2 runs over the course of 4 2/3 innings, and then a bullpen was able to be lights out from there. Carlos Aceves, Jose Quiada, Jimmy Harrigan, Matt Moore, they all give you more with the scoreless inning, and Ryan Tepera and out of the bullpen. And Taylor Ward also went deep in this one as for Ohtani, he goes deep off of the starter George Kirby, and Matthew Festa gives up home run to Taylor Ward, a second home run in the campaign for Festa, 3 runs surrendered in 2 innings. George Kirby, well, he looked more like Kirby the animated figure that's like a pink blob. 4 runs surrendered in 4 1/3 innings. Ben Murphy, 1 2/3 innings scoreless, and Diego Castillo, a scoreless inning. When you're able to find the LA Dodgers down in a game, typically that's a good live betting opportunity, and you found that in the Monday Rockies versus Dodgers game. Dodgers get down by a count of 4-2, and then they put up a 7 spot in the 5th inning to be able to win that game 13-4. For Ryan Feltner, not the start he was looking for. Gives up 5 runs in 4 2/3 innings, but did a whole heck of a lot better than Jake Bird, who gave the bird pretty much to his team. 4 runs surrendered, got 1 out of the bullpen. Connor Siebold gives up 4 runs in 3 innings as the Dodgers had a trio of home runs. Going deep, Jason Hayward, that's a blast from the past, his first home run of the season. Chris Taylor gets his first. Will Smith gets jiggy with it for his second, and for Colorado, they go 2 of 5 with Ben in scoring position as they did get to Michael Grove. Starter gives up 3 runs over the course of 4 innings, but the Dodgers team had the best bullpen ERA in the National League last year, and they have found some gems. Phil Bickford, Alex Vesia, scoreless inning. Shelby Miller, yes, that Shelby Miller. 2 scoreless innings, and it looks relatively solid right now, and Yancy Almonte gives up a run in an inning. You did see the Cleveland Guardians take down the Oakland A's on Monday in 10 innings, 12-11, not what you'd expect in a night game in Oakland, as Zach Plesac went 1 inning in this game and gave up 6 runs to Oakland. the epitome of brutality. Yes, from there, not a bad long relief appearance from Xavier Curry, who gives up 2 runs over the course of 5 innings at a moment's notice. From there, James Karinchak, Tim Herron, they both go in innings scoreless. Emmanuel Clase does give up 2 runs in an inning, and somehow somebody gets a win before Eli Morgan gives up an unearned run in the 10th as Cleveland goes 7-17 with men in scoring position. Just 1 home run, and it came early. Josh Naylor, second home run season off of James Caprillion, starter for the A's, had better days in this one. 5 runs surrendered in 5 innings. You did have Jersich Familia, Spanish for blown save, and Sam Moll both come in for an inning. Familia gives up 2 runs, both of which were unearned. He was hurt by a Tony Kemp fielding error. Moll scoreless inning, and then Domingo Acevedo, he gives up 3 runs in 2 innings, and you had 2 runs, one of which was earned, give it up in the inning that Trevor May pitched. As for Oakland, you did have a trio of home runs. Seth Brown, his first of the campaign, that comes off of Clase. Roman Laureano gets his second home run season. Then you had Jace Peterson be able to get his first home run season. Great name. And then the Padres walked it off on Monday against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Could not stem the tide to Tuesday, 5-4. The Padres were able to get it done against Arizona on Monday with Ryan Nelson. Not a great start, not a bad start. 3 runs surrendered over the course of 5 innings as he did allow a home run to Mr. Juan Soto for his home run of the season. And then Ha-Sung Kim was able to get a home run late in this game along with David Dahl in the 9th inning to be able to win it for the San Diego Padres. Both of their first home runs of the season both come off of Scott McGough. Yeah, he was looking more like Mr. Magoo as he didn't get it out and he gave up 2 solo home runs to cost his team the game. Cole Sulzer, Miguel Castro combined for 2 scoreless innings and Andrew Chafin a scoreless inning prior to that. And then for the San Diego Padres, Ryan Weathers, he weathers the storm. 2 runs surrendered in 5 innings. You did have Steven Wilson give up a run in 1 1/3 innings. And Brett Honeywell, he gave up 1 run in 2 innings as both of these guys did allow a home run before Tim Hill came in and got a pair of outs out of the bullpen for Arizona going deep. Evan Longoria for his home run season. Corbin Carroll his first home run season. Then fast forward to Tuesday, and for the San Diego Padres, they lose by a count of 8-6 after they had a pretty commanding lead in this one. They were up by a count of, as a matter of fact, 5-1 going into the 6th inning. Yu Darvish was rocking and rolling as Darvish in his first start of the year gives up 1 run in 5 innings, and the moment he got lifted, things went down the toilet bowl as you had Honeywell pitch once again in this one. 1 2/3 innings scoreless. He did his part. Domingo Tapia scoreless inning, but Luis Garcia gives up 4 runs and he gets just 1 out. Nabel Crisman gives up 3 runs in an inning as it was just small ball for the Arizona Diamondbacks. They go 4-14 with men in scoring position as Zach Gallen, second straight start in which he did not have it. 5 runs, 4 of which were earned, surrendered by him over the course of 6 innings, including a pair of jacks as with the San Diego Padres, Nelson Cruz gets his first home run season, Xander Bogaerts gets his third, and Trent Grisham gets home run number 2. That was off of Dre Jemison. That came in the 9th inning as Jemison gives up a run in 2 innings, and Kevin Ginkel a scoreless inning. So Arizona able to have that comeback. Max Scherzer allowed back-to-back-to-back jacks. 9-0. The Milwaukee Brewers just pound the New York Mets. Wade Miley was having a party in Milwaukee. Gives up no runs over the course of 6 innings, 5 hits, no walks. Peter Strzelski, Hobie Milner, Javi Guerra, I'll give you a scoreless inning from there. And the men that were able to take Max Scherzer deep. Brian Anderson, his first home run season, he would get his second off of Brooks Raley later on in the game. Rowdy Tellez, his first. And then you had home runs number 1 and 2 of the season for one Mr. Garrett Mitchell as he took Scherzer deep, and then he would take Brooks Raley deep as Scherzer 5 runs surrendered in 5 1/3 innings with 3 home runs. From there, you did have a pair of outs out of the bullpen from Danny Reyes and Brooks Raley. He gave up 4 runs in an inning, including a pair of bombs before Adam Ottavino stems the tide and was able to give the team a scoreless inning. For the Cincinnati Reds, they entered into the 7th inning of their game against the Chicago Cubs up by a count of 3-2, and they lost 12-5. For the Cubs, they put up a 6 spot in the 7th inning and a 3 spot in the 8th to really blow this game open. We'll talk more about the Cubs in the next segment with our good friend Danny Burke, but Hayden Wesneski did not look sharp in this one. 3 runs surrendered in 4 2/3 innings for the Cubs. As for the Reds, pair of bombs in this one from Joey Vosler, his 3rd home run season. Then you had TJ Friedel get a 2nd home run in the campaign. Stuart Fairchild was able to go deep off of Adbert Alzolay for his first, and Alzolay gives up 2 runs in 2 2/3 innings. Michael Rucker, Brad Boxberger both give you an out of the bullpen, and Julian Merriweather a scoreless inning. But for the Cubs, they went, I'm not even kidding here, 10 of 21 with men in scoring position. No home runs, just a lot of contact in general. As Luis Sessa, not a bad start. 2 runs surrendered in 5 1/3 innings. Ian Gabo gives you a pair of outs out of the bullpen, and then Buck Farmer gives up 3 runs without getting it out. Revier San Martin, 3 runs, 1 of which was earned. Didn't get it out. Joe Cuno gives up 3 runs in 2 innings, and Fernando Cruz gives up a run in an inning. That was less than ideal for our good friends, the Cincinnati Reds. This was very ideal for the Philadelphia Phillies. They finally get their first win of the season as they take down the Yankees by a count of 4-1. Early on in the game, got a pair of bombs out of Kyle Schwarber and Brandon Marsh as they're able to go deep for their first home runs of the campaign, giving those up for the New York Yankees. One Domingo Hudamon got 8 strikeouts in 4 2/3 innings, but gave up a pair of jacks and 4 runs in 4 2/3 innings. Bullpen from there was good. Albert Abreu, 2 scoreless innings. Jimmy Cordero, 8 scoreless inning, and Michael King for outside the bullpen. Lone form of offense for the Yankees was too little too late. DJ turned it up LeMahieu, his first home run of the season. Shock, surprise. Craig Kimbrell gave up that home run. Good grief. When are we going to stop giving this guy opportunities? He gives up a run in an inning. The lone run that the Phillies gave up, Matt Strahm, a surprisingly good start, 4 scoreless innings. Andrew Bellotti, Jose Alvarado, both go scoreless inning, and then Connor Brogdon, 2 scoreless. But Craig Kimbrell not do the job. The Atlanta Braves get home the DK pick. They take down the St. Louis Cardinals by a count of 4-1. In less than shocking fashion, all these runs were given up by Steven Matz, who got off to a relatively rough start in this game as he went 5 1/3 innings, gave up 10 hits, 4 runs in total, and a pair of bombs. Going deep for the Atlanta Braves, Austin Riley, second home run of the season, and Orlando Arcia is able to get his first as the Dodd father, Dylan Dodd, at his MLB debut, very solid. He did give up 6 hits in 5 innings, but just 1 run allowed, and then bullpen was able to have his back. Kirby Yates, AJ Minter, Jesse Chavez all surrender nothing in their scoreless innings, and Joey Jimenez, Dylan Lee, they were able to combine for a scoreless inning. As for the St. Louis Cardinals, just nothing doing for them. They had a couple guys get thrown out at home as the bullpen was solid. Giovanni Gallegos, Andre Palante, both led a scoreless inning, and Drew Verhagen, 1 2/3 innings scoreless. We saw a 4-1 final with the Pittsburgh Pirates as a plus money winner, being able to get it done against the Boston Red Sox. For Nick Pivetta, 3 runs surrendered in 5 innings, but he really wasn't that bad. It was only 1 earned run as he did allow a pair of home runs, but was not helped out by the fielding in this one. Going deep for the Pittsburgh Pirates, Brian Reynolds, 4th home run season, then Bay, as Ji-Hwan Bae was able to get his first home run of the season as Oronzi Contreras. A very good start for the Pittsburgh Pirates. 1 run surrendered in 5 2/3 innings. The Red Sox had scored at least 5 runs in each of their first 4 games, held down in this one. Colin Holderman, David Bednar, Jordi Barreta, all able to give you a scoreless inning, and you got an out of the bullpen from Jose Hernandez. And for the Boston Red Sox, bullpen was not bad in this one. Josh Winkowski, he did not lose this one. He gave up just 1 run in 3 innings, and Ryan Brazier, a scoreless inning. You also saw the Miami Marlins do a great job with their pitching. 1-0 as Sandy Alcantara is able to finish the job. A complete game shutout. Gave up just 3 hits, 1 walk. He was tremendous. Did it in 100 pitches. And lone offense in this game, Avicio Garcia. In the second inning, he takes Kenta Maeda deep for his first home run season. I will say, for Kenta Maeda, first starts in 2021. Tough luck loser because he was actually good in this one. He allows that solo home run, but gave up just that 1 run in 5 innings, 9 strikeouts, no walks. Emilio Pagan, 2 scoreless innings. Giovanni Morin, scoreless inning. He just happened to be pitching on the same day as Sandy Alcantara. So, feel for him there. For the Tampa Bay Rays, they put up a 5 spot in the 9th inning to overcome a deficit and take down the Washington Nationals by a count of 10-6. Being someone that stupidly bet on the Nationals, I feel a little bit salty about this one as Josh Fleming, he was taken out to lunch on this one. 5 runs surrendered over the course of 3 innings. From there, Jalen Beeks, 2 scoreless innings. Ryan Thompson, Pete Fairbanks, both lend a scoreless inning. And Kevin Kelly, he gives up 1 run over the course of 2 innings. And for the Rays, they were just really able to open this thing up in the 9th inning. Luke Raley was able to go deep off of Kyle Finnegan, his 3rd home run of the season. You had home run number 1 of the season off of one of the lows as Josh Lowe was able to get low for his first home run of the season. Prior to that, you had Jose Siri get a 2nd home run of the season off of Chad Kuhl, and you had Yandy Diaz be able to crank up a 3-run homer off of Kyle Finnegan for his 2nd home run of the season. For Kyle Finnegan, boy, gives up 3 home runs, 5 runs in total while getting 1 out. Chad Kuhl was not sharp. He gives up 4 runs over the course of 5 innings, but prior to Finnegan, the bullpen was looking halfway decent. Erasmo Ramirez, Carl Edwards Jr., scoreless inning. Hunter Harvey gives up a run in an inning, and got a pair of outs out of the bullpen from Hobie Harris. And for the Tampa Bay Rays, they get this one to the window as the Washington Nationals go 3 of 16 with men in scoring position. So that's how it's going for them. We've got a few games that are going on as I'm doing this. The Blue Jays are wrapping up a win over the Kansas City Royals. This one lands 4-1 as for the Blue Jays, Yusei Kikuchi looked halfway decent. 1 walk, 1 run allowed over the course of 5 innings. He did allow a home run. Going deep for the Kansas City Royals, you had Franmil Reyes get his first home run season, and Chris with the K. Bubich, not terrible either. Gives up 2 runs over the course of 5 innings. Bullpen from there, a little bit shaky. Amir Garrett gives up a run in an inning. Aroldis Chapman a scoreless setting, and you had Carlos Hernandez give up a home run over the course of his 2 innings. Going deep for Toronto, Dalton Varsho, his first as a Blue Jay, and the Blue Jays bullpen had Yusei Kikuchi's back, as Yimi Garcia, Tim Mesa both get 4 outs out of the bullpen scoreless for Mesa. All 4 of those came by a strikeout. Eric Swanson and out of the bullpen, and Jordan Romano was able to land a scoreless inning. The Orioles are on their way to knocking off the Texas Rangers. It is 7-2 currently in the bottom of the 8th, as Ode Mateo and Ryan Mountcastle got their second home runs of the season, as Andrew Heaney got destroyed. 2 2/3 innings, he gives up all 7 of the runs I'm currently seeing in this game, including those 2 home runs. Dane Dunning in super long relief, 4 scoreless innings. He should be a starter, by the way, but Taylor Hearn, he was able to go 1 1/3 inning scoreless, and for the Rangers right now, all they've got to show is a pair of home runs, as Nathaniel Lowe, first home run season off of Kyle Gibson, and then Gibson also gave one up to Adolis Garcia's first, and for Gibson, on a day in which a bullpen really needed it, gives up those 2 solo home runs over the course of 7 innings. The Detroit Tigers, going into the bottom of the 8th, up by a count of 5-2 on the Texas Rangers. We'll see where this lands, but Spencer Torkelson opened up this game in the 8th inning. His first home run of the season, ding dong, the witch is dead. He finally did something against Matt Manning. Relatively solid start for the Detroit Tigers, 5 2/3 innings. He gives up 2 runs, including a home run to Kyle Tucker, his second home run of the campaign. From there, you've had Jason Foley give 4 outs out of the bullpen, and for the Houston Astros, Framber Valdez left after he gave up 3 runs, 2 of which were earned over the course of 7 innings. Did have 9 strikeouts, but did give up 8 hits, and then Ryan Stanek, whose ERA was about $1.20 last year, gave up 2 runs in 2/3 of an inning, including that home run to Spencer Torkelson. So there's that, and West Coast games are just getting started as I record this, so we don't have anything on that front, but what we do have is trends that we are seeing in Major League Baseball, and I mentioned it on Monday. We saw all those overs, so as of right now, with about half the games from Tuesday accounted for, 38 overs, 26 unders, and a push thus far this year on MLB totals, so nearly 60% to the over. And we've been noticing that a lot of road teams have been doing well. 35 and 31 to start out the season. Favorites straight up on the money line are at 59%. On the run line, favorites have been able to cover as well. There has only been 5 favorites that have won by approximately 1 run. So that is something to watch out for, and I'll be monitoring this all year long. That's what we saw in baseball late Monday into Tuesday, and that's what we're getting trend-wise. And coming up next, we're talking with our good friend Danny Burke. We're going to take a look at the NL Central. We're going to take a look at the Cubs and some of Wednesday's action with him right here on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSIN Family Podcast.
Are you ready to become a winning sports bettor? Schedule a call with SBIA to find out how their service can make you a long-term winning player. They've developed an innovative algorithm that maximizes units return, and they are so confident in their system that they offer a money-back guarantee. Sign up by October 31st and get their MBA package at no cost until they reach 10 net units. They treat sports betting like a business. So if you want to learn how to make your sports betting dreams a reality, visit them at SBIA1.com and check them out on social media at SBIA Sports.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball, this is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSIN Family Podcast. We've got one of our fellow hosts from VSIN aboard, Danny Burke. He does a great job with the show, Bet on Chicago, which you're able to hear on WLSAM 890 if you're out there in the great state of Illinois every Saturday. On top of that, I know that he does a lot of our live betting coverage during the weekends as well. I joined him during some of our Final Four coverage this last weekend. I know that he does a terrific podcast of his own, the Hockey Betting Podcast, along with our good friend Andy McNeil. Those two guys are aces out there on the frozen ice. And Danny, he is hot when it comes to the ball diamond as well, as you're able to follow him on Twitter at Danny Burke 5. So his first and last name, and then the number 5. And Danny, always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, always happy to be with you, Greg. It's a good sign when we're talking again, because that means that we're back in the action on the diamond. So I know it's one of your favorite sports to wager on, one of my favorite sports to handicap, and looking forward to hopefully an exciting and profitable baseball season.
I'm looking forward to it as well. And Danny, what have you made out of the first, we'll call it 5.5 days of the season? Because it certainly has been interesting to take a look at these games, and it does feel like the rule changes having a little bit of an effect. I don't think that it's anything too drastic, but we have been noticing that this week quite a few overs have been taking effect. I think part of this is because you do have some phantom strikes, phantom balls due to pitch clock violations, what have you. But it has been interesting because I do think that the biggest thing of all has been the lack of a shift, which has allowed for a few more base hits.
Agreed. And when you look at the pitch clock, I think when we were talking about this heading into the season, everybody pegged this as being the most impactful alteration to the game. And look, that still could be the case when we look back at it and everything. And certainly when you look at how fast these games are going, absolutely. But from a betting perspective, that's the bigger question. What has the biggest impact to us bettors? And yes, I think the pitch clock still to a certain extent does. But at the same time, I also feel like these pitchers and hitters will be able to adapt to the pitch clock fairly easily. You saw it happen in AAA baseball in the minors, wherever they were testing it out. They had the reps doing it in spring training. And yeah, you've had some humps at the beginning stages of this season. That was inevitable. But I think it's going to be the best thing for baseball. I went to opening day with the Cubs, and it did feel weird. The game took like a little over than 2 hours, and I was just like, what? Like, how did it finish so fast? But you know, when you're betting on multiple games at once and you're like ready for it to be over because you don't want to sweat it out anymore, I think that's kind of a nice thing just from a personal standpoint. But going back to the betting, yeah, the shift I thought was going to be one of the most impactful things. And not only just from an overall viewpoint of the runs, but think about player props too. I mean, these big lefty hitters where you're watching it and they just crank it and you're like, oh, let's go. And they're like, that's right, they got the shift. Well, now that that's been abandoned and outlawed, essentially, this is going to open up the door for a lot of power hitters. This is going to open up the door for these props to come in maybe a little bit more securely. I've been using an example, and maybe it's not the best one right now because he hasn't been doing that well, but a guy like Cody Bellinger, who the Cubs picked up, you know, a big lefty power hitter who I'm sure a lot of his hits throughout his career have been taken away because of how the shift was utilized. And again, he's not doing too great so far as a Cub per se, but he'll get there. And I think the stats will get padded because of that. You think of guys like an Anthony Rizzo, a Schwarber. I know I'm naming off all former Cubs, but these are all the big lefties that I've been accustomed to who have been hurt by the shift. I'm an advocate for it. I think it'll be good for baseball. It will equal more runs. And yeah, when you look at like total hits, total bases, RBI opportunities, all of these little props, I think you can nitpick even more so at the beginning of the year, but then it will open up the door for more of those opportunities because it all gets correlated with the runs and on base percentage and all of those chances to get in more runs batted in at the end of the day. So again, I like it. I do, like you said, you clearly are seeing the impact of it. And, you know, aside from that, too, the prop that's been seeing a big impact, Greg, the stolen bases, you know, the bases were expanded a little bit, and whether or not that's taking as much of an impact, I still think it goes more toward the disengagement rules and then still with just the pitch clock. I think that's a bigger case versus the bases being expanded, albeit I'm sure that does aid them, but mainly being all those rules with the pitch clock and disengagement. So it's been an adjustment, but overall, Greg, I think it's going to be good for baseball.
I do think so as well. Being able to get games done a little bit earlier, I think is very nice. I do think that there's going to be more people are going to be willing to bet on it when it comes to being that lone sport that you're able to take a look at during the summertime. So I do think that there's a lot of net positives. As joining me on the podcast, we do have Danny Burke. He does amazing work here at VSIN. And Danny, going into Tuesday, we did see the Cubs have a little bit of a rough start to the season. They win that opener against the Brewers, and then they lose 3 straight. We do not know how the game for Tuesday went for the Chicago Cubs, but what have you made out of the opening first few games of the season? Because it has been a little bit touch and go for them, and I like a lot of the moves that they made in the offseason, as you mentioned, bringing in Cody Bellinger, and bigger than that, bringing in Dansby Swanson, I think is terrific, because I do think that at the end of the day, the Cubs have a chance to perhaps be that number 2 team in the NL Central. I do think that things are going to be picking up for them moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Greg. I mean, going into the season, as a Cubs fan, you know, we're all waiting for Ricketts and company to make those big name acquisitions, and it didn't really come to fruition. But instead, what they did is compile a lot of what I've been calling above average players, with the exception of Dansby Swanson, who's pretty much right now he's playing like an absolute all-star, but he's for sure the biggest signing, and he's been living up to the hype early on. And then you got guys like Eric Hosmer, Trey Mancini, good stories, power bats, not necessarily contact and consistent hitting. Cody Bellinger, I mentioned him already, but look, this is a buy low, low risk, high reward. There we go. I'm trying to say with Cody Bellinger, because Greg, we know he has MVP capabilities, but he has struggled the past couple of seasons. And I think a new environment will bode well for him. I think the changes in the rules, as I alluded to, will bode well for him. Going to a hitter's ballpark in Wrigley with the wind blowing out can't hurt. So, again, I think that could be, certainly, as we know, a boom or bust acquisition. But they've compiled a lot of these guys who can put the Cubs in position to be in playoff consideration at the end of the year. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to win the division, but I think they will be vying for that wild card spot once we get into August, once we get into September. And I know it's been a little rocky to begin, but this is because of the issues that fall in line with, one, I think the offense and playing in colder weather, as you know, being from the Midwest. But two, and this was the big question mark for the Cubs, for myself going in, is what the heck are we going to expect out of this bullpen? And I really still don't know. It was an interesting move to put Keegan Thompson there, but it's paid off thus far, and I think he's a really strong pitcher. But aside from him and some of these other guys like Alzolay and Fulmer and Boxberger, like, yeah, they can be good, but I just am a little hesitant to fully trust this bullpen. And the best thing to happen to the Cubs was Stroman lighting it up on opening day. That's what you needed, because you know last year his home and road splits were egregious. At Wrigley Field, he could not catch a break. But he started off very strong. Tyon, rough start for him. But, you know, again, it's the first one. Get it out of the way. Then let's work from there. Justin Steele, is he really going to be that good, or did he get the benefit from colder weather? Well, I'm not so sure yet. And even though Kyle Hendricks is injured and is going to come back, Hendricks is not really a reliable starter. I mean, he'll give you like one good outing every four, and then the other three, you got to fade him because he's just going to get demolished. That's what we've seen the past couple of years, unfortunately, out of Hendricks. But at the end of the day, look, they've still got some pieces. They got a bunch of above-average guys at a lot of these positions, and also they're waiting for Seiya Suzuki to come back. They could definitely be the second-best team in the division. But again, I'm going to wait to see if they keep kind of getting in a drought here, if they stay stalling offensively, they get in this lull in their schedule, and the odds shift for maybe not even their win total, but their odds to make the playoffs. Because I know it was around like plus 350 at DraftKings or some books heading into the season. And knowing how long the baseball season is, and with the Cubs not having the highest expectations themselves, if they go on somewhat of a losing streak or just a cold spell, the odds are going to all turn in your favor if you want to bet the yes. That's a given because of how long this season is and because of how hard it is to have consistency and success in this league. So I think that'll be a good bet to keep an eye on and monitor throughout the year. But yeah, Cubs can be competitive, Greg, but they're also going to be very frustrating, as they typically tend to be. But I do think they'll be a team that presents some value from time to time.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Marcus Stroman and the fact that he was really good on the road last season. As we do have Danny Burke of VSIN joining me on the podcast, would the game for Wednesday be a spot where you might be looking to back him? He's going to be going up against Hunter Green of the Reds on the road, and this is a pick'em game between minus 105 and minus 110, and I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this line. Total is 8, by the way, but it just feels really short on Marcus Stroman because you mentioned it. On the road, he was magnificent. A sub-2.3 ERA. There was no question that he was able to get the job done there. The bullpen, I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Not necessarily the world's greatest, but if you're able to go 6 strong innings, then you do get into Michael Fulmer, Brad Boxberger, more of those trustworthy guys, and you're able to steer clear of the likes of Michael Rucker.
You nailed it. That's exactly it. So the Cubs really got to get quality starts out of their starting rotation. And look, if Stroman is going to keep this up on a consistent basis, then yeah, it's probably something you want to jump in on sooner rather than later before the lines fully adjust. The caveat here, of course, is what are you going to get out of Hunter Green? I know he didn't have a great outing himself necessarily in his first pitching day or in his first pitching performance this season. And last year was kind of funny because the Reds were obviously one of the worst teams, Greg, and you know this, but people were more interested and more inclined to take an underdog price with the Reds when Green was on the bump because of what potential he may possess. But I still think he's a tad bit too volatile. You look at his FIP last season, 4.37, and he had a high home run to fly ball ratio, really struggled getting the ball on the ground, only 29% with his ground ball rate. I think he will progress into a good pitcher, but he's still in the very early stages. this should be a game where the Cubs win, regardless of, because of course we're recording this Tuesday night, regardless of the outcome of the game tonight. Yeah, the Cubs should have a slight advantage. I'll be curious to see where the line moves, but my first inclination would be to side with the Cubbies.
Yep, same here. I'm in total agreement with you, and he almost reminds me a little bit of Luis Castillo. If you remember Luis Castillo, his first year or two up there at the big leagues, you knew he had good stuff. He just couldn't rein it in, and he just needed some reps. I feel like Hunter Green is very much in that same vein. And Danny, taking a look at the NL Central as a whole, because I know that you were mentioning the Cubs, yes, no, to make the playoff prop. I'm not sure about you, but I just take a look at this division. I think the clear number one team is the St. Louis Cardinals. I do think the biggest question is whether or not the Cubs or the Brewers are going to be that number two team. I think that that's going to be a good race to take a look at all year long. But I just take a look at this division, and I think that it's one of the divisions in which it has a very demonstrative big favorite. And I do think that the Cardinals should be one of the biggest divisional favorites out there in all of baseball at this point, because I think the difference between they and everyone else in the division is quite large.
Completely agree with you, Greg. And I didn't get involved with the Cardinals preseason. I'm hoping and waiting I can get a better number throughout the midst of this entire baseball season, just because, like I said, reiterating before, I mean, it's such a long year that inevitably these teams are going to go through those dry spells, and potentially you can adjust enough to warrant a bet. With the Cardinals, since these books and us bettors already have the preconceived notion that they are the top team, I fear that even if they do go through that lull themselves, it may not adjust enough. But if it's still in the similar realm to where it was, because you were still laying a price with the Cardinals to win the division, I just didn't love the idea of, keeping my money locked up by laying a price so early. If we can get that, maybe say around July, obviously even later would be great, but I doubt you would if the Cardinals are looking solid. But if you could get it like late June, middle July, I think that will be a green light to go on St. Louis, because they are for sure the best team in this division. They should end up with a comfortable winning margin throughout the NL Central. And again, you're a Brewers fan. Look, their pitching can only take them so far. Their offense, it's been lackluster for the past few seasons. And look, it's actually been okay to start out the year, but I'm kind of thinking that's going to regress. And the Cubs will be a sneaky squad, but they're not going to be killing you every other day. It's going to be in their patterns. They're going to have to take advantage of the inferior opponents. And for them, the Cardinals are not one of them. So the Cardinals should have an upper hand on the division. I'm with you, Greg. I think they're going to have a great year in the Central. And the one thing about the Cardinals outside of the NL Central, when they're looking at other teams or postseason numbers, again, is way far ahead. But you need to get a little bit deeper in their starting rotation. If you're a Cardinals fan and you want them to go far, I think that is the area rather that they need to still capitalize toward the trade deadline at any point in the season. And if they can really figure that out with their pitching, they are going to be a lethal team. And for you and I, Greg, being fans of other teams in the Central, it's infuriating because no matter what, it seems like the Cardinals are always competitive in this dang division. And this year they actually have the wits to complete it all the way from start to finish. So unfortunately for us, we're going to have to watch the Cardinals celebrate a lot of victories, I imagine.
Yep, with the St. Louis Cardinals, you know that is going to be coming, because this Cardinals team, as much as you hate to say it, they are just always year in and year out a machine. Right when it feels like, they might be falling off, they might be getting a little bit older, they bring up like 5 guys in the farm system that they all come up. They all do an amazing job. That is just the Cardinals' way. I want to know what they put in the water up there in the great state of Missouri, because whatever it is, it really helps out those guys. As Danny Burke is joining me on the podcast. And Danny, in terms of the games that we are going to be getting on Wednesday, anything really catch your eye? Because we did talk about the Cubs versus the Reds game. I do think that is of fascination, and feels like we're in lockstep that the Cubs have a little bit of value on a rather pick-em line. But anything else standing out to you, whether you just want to take in a little bit more of the two teams going at it, or if there's a better two that right now you're circling?
So a game that's at least on my radar from kind of just a entertainment perspective, and because I have a futures involved in this, the Giants and the White Sox. So you got Dylan Cease taking on Logan Webb. Now, Logan Webb, not the most ideal start to his 2023 campaign against the Yankees, albeit a tough matchup on the road against the Bronx Bombers. But I took a 33-1 flyer on Logan Webb to win the NL Cy Young. And the reason I did that is because I really liked Webb last year. The only thing that kind of hurt him a little bit, which I'm hoping will flatline or at least improve and just not be too sporadic, was his road splits. That's where his numbers got worse and you couldn't trust him as much. But he's clearly the ace of the Giants. the Giants are going to be in a regression season. I'm hoping, can be the spotlight. Like when these teams are not doing too well, you look forward to like this one pitcher because it's like, all right, this is where we really have a chance to win. This is where you can trust them a little bit more so potentially back them. I'm hoping Logan Webb can fit the bill for that. And being, when you're playing at home in San Francisco, a pitcher-friendly park, I think that will boast his numbers. But again, the reason I'm looking at that is because of that situation. And then Dylan Cease, look, I'm a diehard Cubs fan, and I always like to give my friends who are Sox fans grief left and right. It's always a button rivalry. But Dylan Cease is an absolute dog. I mean, this guy can easily win AL Cy Young this season, and it shouldn't shock anybody. He was right there in the running last year. What I was just describing that I hope can happen with Logan Webb was the case with Dylan Cease last year. So this is going to be a really star-studded pitching matchup. The weather is going to be really bad. It may get delayed. It may get rained out. You're seeing the over-under at 7.5 right now. I would still consider the under. And I'm not someone who's really doing full game unders, and I get there's the argument both ways, but I just prefer first fives because my investment in the first place is going to be focused on these starting pitchers. And ideally, you could get them for the first 5 innings. And then at that point, then you got to get into the bullpens. And long story short, if I'm doing anything with the under, I would look first 5 under for the White Sox and the Giants. So not sure I'm 100% going to be involved in that game from a betting standpoint, but from a viewing standpoint, absolutely. Another intriguing one here, Greg, the Yankees and the Phillies, Nola and Cole. This is really fascinating, of course, because the Phillies on their slow start, the Yankees picking up where they left off last regular season, just dominating offensively. And look, right now I'm seeing around like minus 140, and this could be a game where you might want to jump in sooner rather than later because the price could get bet up. Maybe not. Maybe people want to invest in Nola in the underdog role. I'm not quite sure, but I still think until we see otherwise from the Phillies, and especially when they're going up against a dominant offense of the Yankees, anything under minus 150 could be attractive. So those are the first 2 games that stand out, kind of just looking through everything. I usually wait till the games conclude because then you also get a better idea of just what to expect with these numbers the next day. But yeah, those are the 2 games really standing out. And then like we talked about, the Cubs and the Reds. So pretty good slate tomorrow, and we'll definitely have some action once the games begin.
And to your point, we oftentimes see a lot of that line movement in baseball happen in the very early AM hours, where I am, the West Coast, right around 4 to 5 a.m., more out there in the Central Time Zone where Danny is, more around like 6 to 7 a.m. So if you take a look at some of those games, you fire in after those are all done, you're able to get some very good value, and you always get tremendous value listening to Danny because, Danny, I know you do a few shows and a few podcasts over at VSIN. You do a great job on the weekends taking a look at our live betting coverage. I know you're a part of our new hockey podcast as well with our good friend Andy McNeil. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, appreciate it. Tuesday and Thursdays, the hockey podcast, like Greg said, with myself and Andy McNeil. Really exciting time to bet the puck right now. Even if you don't get into it too much, that's what the podcast is here for. We're here to help you out with it, with the novice bettors and the experienced bettors. But Andy, one of the best in the biz, covering the puck, and I love betting it myself. So it's a pleasure to do that twice a week. It will be really fun, too, once the playoffs come throughout, not only because hockey, the Stanley Cup playoffs are one of the most exciting, but when you get to bet these series prices, go game by game, it's really thrilling and a good sport to capitalize on. And then on the weekends, live bet Saturday and Sunday, 6 to 10 p.m. Central Time out by me. And, of course, 4 to 8 Pacific Time by you. Then bet on Chicago, like you said, Saturday evenings as well. So we're kind of all over the place, but exciting time, as you know, Greg. Looking forward to all the action, my man.
There is a lot of action to be had. Even though college basketball is done, the Masters is getting going in the next few days. As Danny mentioned, the NHL playoffs, which is one of the best playoffs out there in all of sports, whether you bet hockey or not, because I'm not much of a hockey bettor, but I do appreciate the NHL playoffs. That's always high-level action. The NBA playoffs is going to be getting started soon. NFL draft is coming up within the next few weeks. And Danny does a great job of covering it all. And every time he joins this podcast, lends tremendous insights. A big thanks to Danny Burke of VSIN for joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSIN family podcast. And coming up next, it's that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this MLB Wednesday as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSIN family podcast. it is always great to get Danny Burke aboard. He does amazing work here at the network, taking a look at the great game of hockey as he does our hockey podcast here at VSIN. But on top of that, you heard him doing a great job taking a look at the game of baseball. He is based out there in the state of Illinois, taking a look at the Cubs, taking a look at the White Sox. Does a great job with the futures market as well. I'll try to get him on throughout the entirety of the season because he's always able to spot some very good opportunities to be able to get good value there, and it is always valuable to get him on this podcast. A big thanks to Danny for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this MLB Wednesday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter feed at gunit_81. Going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order. This is actually very simple, where it goes National League games first, then the American League games, and Interleague games are at the bottom. It's not as convoluted as it is with college basketball, and I'll just be going in this format all season long. It feels like I get much less backlash going in rotation order when it comes to baseball than college basketball. So we'll stick with this, and hey, our DK Nation pick, it is at the top here with 951, 952. It is the Chicago Cubs hitting the road face-off against the Cincinnati Reds. Yes, we are on to Cincinnati, and Hunter Green is on to getting the start for the Reds, and Marcus Stroman is on the bump for the Cubs. Pick'em game, anywhere between -104 and -110 both ways. Total on this game is 8 with the over and the under anywhere between -105 and -115. And I made the Cubs a -140 favorite, so my write-up here is taking the Cubs on a rather pick'em line. Marcus Stroman was absolutely tremendous on the road last season. Could not find it at home to save his life last year. I do think that is going to iron out, and we saw that perhaps starting up in his first start of the season when he went 6 scoreless against the Milwaukee Brewers. But for Marcus Stroman, I mean, the way that he was able to pitch on the road last year was tremendous. 2.06 ERA across 13 starts, 0.7 home runs, and 1.7 walks per 9 innings. Now, the Cubs did go 5-8 in its 13 road starts last season, but we talked about with Danny, big acquisitions for this team. They pick up Cody Bellinger. They also pick up Dansby Swanson. I think that these guys are going to be very positive additions. Patrick Wisdom is going to strike out his fair share amount, but he's able to hit some bombs. Eric Hosmer is a little bit of an under-the-radar guy, and then guys like Nick Madrigal and Nico Horner are able to move the line. Meanwhile, for the Cincinnati Reds, their top returner in terms of home runs from last year is TJ Friedel, who had 12 home runs last year, along with Jake Fraley, who had 12 home runs. So, yeah, that's not necessarily too terrific. They don't have a lot of star power. They pick up Will Myers, but he hasn't been himself in recent years. Kevin Newman, Spencer Steer, these are not very reliable bats in the lineup. I like the way that Jonathan India is able to move the line, and we've seen a few good at-bats from Jason Vossler to begin the season, but for Jason Vossler, this is JAG, just a guy, and for the Reds, they were 28th in the league in bullpen ERA last year. Now, I think that they're much better than this in terms of their bullpen. You take a look at Alexis Diaz, Fernando Cruz, they both had a sub-2 ERA. Javier Martin, since getting sent to the bullpen, has been halfway decent. Joel Kuno had a little bit of a touch-and-go start to the year last year, but he was able to be a little bit better towards back out of the campaign, but still had a 6.36 ERA. Meanwhile, for the Cubs, the bullpen is still not ideal, but with being able to get length out of Marcus Stroman, it does allow you to accentuate the fact that you've got two good relievers out there in Brad Boxberger coupled with Michael Fulmer. These two guys were signed in the offseason, sub-3.5 ERAs for both of these guys last year, being able to steer clear of guys like Julian Merriweather, Michael Rucker. That is very much of the advantage of the Chicago Cubs. And for Hunter Green, just has been someone that gives up rockets. Overall, Green has a 4.88 ERA with 1.9 home runs and 3.9 walks per 9 innings allowed at his home starts in his year plus at the big league level. So that is a bit of an issue. And we were talking about Danny. Great upside, able to throw 100 plus miles per hour, but needs to rein it in a little bit more, and I don't think that day is going to be today. I like Marcus Stroman in this spot. I think that the Cubs should be a rather nice size favorite, and even though it is a little bit chilly in the Midwest this time of year, I did set my total at an 8.4 because I do think that the Cubs get to Hunter Green. I'm going to be taking a look at the 8 over and my DK Nation write-up. That is the Cubs money line. Willing to lay up to -140 on them. 953, 954 on the betting board. The Atlanta Braves are going to be taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. Miles Michaelis goes for the Cards, and Bryce Elder is going to be on the bump for the Braves. No numbers up on this game. It was unclear whether or not Elder was going to be getting the start for the Atlanta Braves, so that is why there's no numbers up on this game, but have no fear, I've always got a handicap for you guys in terms of these games, and I did set the St. Louis Cardinals as a minus 136 favorite, so I'm willing to lay up to a minus 135. With the Cards, I would need at least a plus 137 on the Braves. If it gets to a run line spot, I would need at least a plus 150 to lay a run and a half with the Cardinals, and 9.2 is my projected total. A 9 or less, looking over 9.5 or higher. I'd be diving in on and under with Elder. He's gotten some starts. A kid from Texas that had an overall decent ERA last year at a 3.17. He doesn't have necessarily the world's greatest advanced stats, so he was able to get about 7.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. The walks numbers, though, they really do concern me, right around 3.7, 3.8 walks per 9 innings, and his numbers were very much inflated because his last 5 appearances of the year last year came against the Miami Marlins and the Washington Nationals, and as a matter of fact, out of, I believe, the 10 total starts that he made, 7 came against the Marlins and the Washington Nationals. That is going to make your ERA look a whole heck of a lot better than what it should be. Meanwhile, Miles Michaelis, bad start to the year. He goes out there, he gets completely destroyed, and that was not necessarily so terrific. He goes 3 1/3 innings. He gave up, I believe it was 5 runs along the way, so he's looking to shake that off, and I do think that he's going to be able to do so. Michaelis, last year, right around 7 strikeouts per 9 innings, not necessarily so savory there, but he only gives out sub 2 walks per 9 innings. It is a little bit cooler out there in the Midwest this time of year, so that works in his advantage. Now, for the Atlanta Braves, you just have a complete bomb squad of a lineup. Matt Olson looked tremendous in spring training. He entered into yesterday with a pair of homers. Ronald Acuna Jr. After last year, he was still trying to come back from injury. This year, he's back to being the Ronald Acuna Jr. of old. Travis d'Arnaud is off to a good start. Michael Harris, you love what he's able to provide in the outfield. Orlando Arcia has been rock solid. Really, the only guy that has been having some issues for this team is Eddie Rosario, and he's pretty much one of your lesser hitters anyway. And for the St. Louis Cardinals, this team is able to mash, and they're able to get on base. They're dealing with an injury to Lars Nootbaar, but when you've got Jordan Walker and company out there, you're just fine. Tyler O'Neill, I think, is going to be in for a big season. They pick up Wilson Contreras to be able to replace Yadier Molina, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado. They entered into yesterday with just 1 home run, but they also entered a combined 14 of 34 at the plate. These guys do a great job of moving the line, but I do think that for the Cardinals, you are going to need to get some solid length out of Miles Michaelis because the bullpen has been a little bit shaky recently. They're looking to Chris Stratton, Packy Nunn as more of their long guys, and then Ryan Helsley has been acting up a little bit in the back half of the bullpen for the Atlanta Braves. They are still dealing with that injury to Tyler Madzik, so they're going to be relying a lot on Lucas Luetke, Dylan Lee, Jesse Chavez, guys of this nature when it comes to the bullpen, and I do think that Michaelis gives a better start than Elder. I think that it's a higher scoring game. I saw yesterday the total got as high as 10 in some spots with the Braves versus Cardinals. That's a little bit too far, especially for this time of year, even with the shift rules. So did set my total at 9.2, 9 or less, looking over 9.5 higher to the under end. With the Cardinals, one to lay up to a minus 136 with them. Need at least a plus 137 to dive in on Atlanta. 955, 956 on the betting board. It is the New York Mets. They hit the road face-off against the Milwaukee Brewers. Corbin Burns is going to be going for the Brew Crew, and not of relation myself, but a guy that we like. David Peterson is on the bump for the Mets. The Mets are between a plus 118 to a plus 122 underdog, anywhere between minus 128 and minus 140. Your number on Milwaukee, with 7.5 being the total, with the over and under both at minus 110. I did set the Brewers as a minus 163 favorite. I know that Corbin Burns had some arbitration disputes during the offseason, and he did not look so great in his first start of the season against the Chicago Cubs, but this guy still has really good swing and miss stuff. He had 3 walks in that first start of the season. I do think that he's going to be able to rein it in. You take a look at Corbin Burns' command last year, and he was giving up fewer than 2.4 walks per 9 innings. Now, he has over the last 2 years, even going back to his Cy Young campaign of 2021, had a little bit of a higher ERA at home rather than on the road, and he did allow about 1.2 home runs per 9 innings when he was at home last season. Meanwhile, you do have a guy, Mr. Peterson, that he's got actually really good home and road splits, a 3.25 road ERA compared to a 4.42 ERA at home last season, and I do feel like he pitched a little bit worse than his numbers would indicate. In that season opener against the Miami Marlins, he gave up 1 run in 5 innings. He took the loss, a little bit of a tough loss if you take a look at that aspect, but he did give up 8 hits in 5 innings, so a Miami Marlins lineup that is not necessarily so terrific. He is backed up by a bullpen that I think is relatively solid. David Robertson, he's able to come in, he's able to hold down the fort as a nice closer for this team. Drew Smith, Adam Ottavino, these are relatively solid relievers, and for the Milwaukee Brewers, you're looking to Peter Strzelski, Hobie Milner to be able to get the ball to Devin Williams, who's been dealing with some injuries to begin the season. He's been dealing with a biceps injury, so you do want to be noting that if the Brewers do get into a safe spot. And for the Brewers, been relatively impressed by the way that some of the young guys have been swinging the bat to begin the year. I do question whether or not it is sustainable, though. You did have the first home run of the career of young Mr. Bryce Terang earlier in the week be a grand slam. You'd love to see that, but Rowdy Tellez, even though he had 35 home runs last year, couldn't really move the line. Jesse Winker off to a relatively solid start. Last year, he hit right around a 220. Year before that, he was hitting darn near 300 for the Reds. I think that he's somewhere in the middle of A and B. Brian Anderson, he's needing to see some meaningful at-bats for the team, so it is a Brewers lineup that has some question marks. And for the Mets, they did have the top batting average on the road last year. It does feel like some of these guys are coming out a little bit cold. Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor have not been able to move the line. I like what I'm seeing out of Starling Marte, and Tommy Pham has been a good addition for the team. Eduardo Escobar, since coming over to the Mets, he certainly has had his trials and tribulations, to say the least. Even last year, he hit just a 240 with under a 300 on base. So you do have some question marks there, but Pete Alonso has been leading the league in home runs on the road the last few years. Sans Aaron Judge, he has been rather impressive, but I do think that Corbin Burns just outclasses David Peterson a little bit more in this spot. I do think that we're going to be seeing good Corbin Burns in this ordeal, although I do think that Peterson as well going to be pitching relatively well. It is cold out there in the state of Wisconsin, as we know. They've always got the retractable roof to be able to help out with that, but did set my total at 7.1. I think that both of these pitchers sling a good game. I'm going to be taking a look at the under on 7.5, and with the Brewers, I did set them at a minus 163 on the money line. If you're taking a look at the run line in this spot, you're finding it right around a plus 160. I need at least about a plus 145 to take a look at the run line, but I don't want to risk the run line in this low scoring of a game, and with this Brewers offense still being one that I don't necessarily trust. So I would rather lay a little bit of a chalkier money line with the Milwaukee Brewers rather than take that run line and go with this total under 957, 958 on the betting board. The Baltimore Orioles hit their face-off against the Texas Rangers. Was supposed to be Kyle Gibson going for the Baltimore Orioles. He got moved up to Tuesday, so to be determined is on the bump for Baltimore. Jacob deGrom is on the bump for the Texas Rangers. Currently no numbers up on this game. When it was Gibson against Jacob deGrom at DraftKings, we saw a total of 7.5 with the under having juice minus 120. Rangers minus 195 on the money line, plus 165 for Baltimore. And I have projected this as if Austin Voth is going to be getting the start for the Baltimore Orioles. We could see something like this, and even if you get someone like a Michael Baumann, this would not change my numbers too much. You would be finding a few pennies of difference. So if it's not Voth, I will have this updated on the spreadsheet in the AM. But that said, I did set the Rangers at a minus 229, and I was willing to lay up to a minus 120 on the run line when this was up at DraftKings. I was seeing the Rangers at a plus 115 run line. I would be all over that, and I did set my total at 8.3, so I'd be looking at the over as well. I don't think that Jacob deGrom is in peak form right now. He did give up 5 runs in 3 2/3 innings to begin the season against the Philadelphia Phillies, and you even go back to last season with Jacob deGrom, his last few starts of the year were not great. He gave up 3+ runs in each out of his last 4 regular season starts, and 3 of those starts came against the A's, the poopy Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Chicago Cubs. I don't know what it is, but Jacob deGrom does not look like Jacob deGrom right now, but at the same time, if you're getting Austin Voth, he's not necessarily someone that is going to be lending great length for this team. Last year, he was able to do actually a rock-solid job of just being able to give you like 3-4 innings, but when they expected more out of him, that's when things really did start to spiral downhill just a little bit. Has never been too much of a swing and miss guy. Overall for his career, his strikeouts per 9 rate, that is right in the neighborhood of about an 8. He does give up his fair share of free passes, a little bit over 3 walks per 9 innings, and the Orioles bullpen is just not what it was last year. Ode Lopez is out of the fold. Keegan Aiken is probably going to be looked to for some innings in this one. Danny Columbia is someone I do like in the bullpen, but by and large, do think that this bullpen that was rather lucky last year, let's call it what it is seeing some negative regression. Meanwhile, with the Texas Rangers, Brock Burke is someone that you were able to rely upon in the bullpen. He and Jonathan Hernandez, sub-3 ERAs last season. They bring in Ian Kennedy, so I like what they're getting there. And for the Texas Rangers, this team just has an absolutely incredible lineup. It took Marcus Semien a while to get online last year. He is dialed in this year. He and Corey Seager at the top. I expect them to both hit above a 275 and both be able to deliver a whole bunch of bombs. Adolis Garcia was up and down last season, but still last season he was able to supply 25 home runs, 300 on base. I expect more of that. And then you've got one of the top prospects in all of baseball, Josh Young, who's been able to do a good job giving the team some professional at-bats. Meanwhile, for Baltimore, offense has been there for the team. Entering into yesterday, Cedric Mullins already had a pair of home runs. You had Mullins along with Austin the Say's kid, Adley Rushman. You're even able to throw in there their young infielder and Adam Frazier. All these guys were doing a good job moving the line. All were hitting above a 300 going into yesterday. Jorge Mateo, one of the best base stealers in all of baseball. He and Mullins, 4 stolen bases going into yesterday. So those increased bases, those are helping those guys out. But for the Baltimore Orioles, bullpen has already been quite taxed this season, as they did have to trot out their Tyler Wells, the projected starter for Tuesday, which is why you do have right now the sort of mix and shaking with regards to the Orioles rotation, as when you have a starter that gets pulled in the second inning like Kyle Brady did on Monday, it does put you a little bit behind the 8 ball, which is why I do have a pretty demonstrative number on this one. Willing to lay up to about a minus 120 on the Rangers run line, laying a run and a half, and at an 8 or less, I'm going to be taking a look at this total over as well. 959, 960 on the betting board. It is the Houston Astros, and they're going to be playing us to the Detroit Tigers. Eduardo Rodriguez is going to be going for the Tigres, and you've got Christian Javier on the bump for the Astros, and the Astros are between a minus 230 favorite and a minus 250 favorite, anywhere between plus 205 and plus 215. Your number on Detroit, 7.5 to 8 is your total on the 8. Under is minus 130, the over is plus 110 on the 7.5. Over and under are both at minus 110, and I did set my total at 7.7, mostly seeing 7.5 out there with stable minus 110 juice, so I'm going to be looking at the over, and with the Astros, made them a minus 247 favorite. The real question is, do you want to press your luck on the run line? And right now, I'm seeing that run line at a minus 105. I'm willing to lay it. I was willing to lay up to a minus 125 on the run line. Tigers were able to get it done in game 1 of this series, but Eduardo Rodriguez, he has been getting a little bit unlucky throughout his MLB career the last few years. I still remember in 2021, his fielding independent was like a full point lower than his actual ERA, but it's just been very shaky with him. I remember he did lead the American League in walks in 2019 as well, and we just haven't seen him out there on the field for the entirety of a season in quite some time. Meanwhile, for Christian Javier, not necessarily the start that he was looking forward to the season against the White Sox, gives up 3 runs in 5 innings, but by and large, I do think that he's going to be just fine. North of 11.5 strikeouts per 9 innings last season. At home, he did give up right around 1.2 home runs per 9 innings, and the walks, it can sometimes be a little bit out of sorts, a little bit over 3 walks per 9 innings last season, but opponents hit a $170 off of him. He does such a great job of being able to get swings and misses, and for the Detroit Tigers, they were able to bust out with their offense on Monday, but this is still one of the worst lineups in the big leagues. You just have your question marks with who's going to be able to give you some power. Spencer Torkelson is struggling once again this year. Javi Baez, since going over to the Detroit Tigers, has been terrible. Eric Haas had one more hit than myself going into yesterday. Nick Maton starts out the year 0 of 10. Riley Green is able to move the line, and Austin Meadows is someone I like, but there's just not a lot there with this lineup. Meanwhile, for the Houston Astros, despite the fact that you do have a few guys that are currently out of the fold, Jose Altuve being injured along with Michael Brantley, you pick up Jose Abreu in the offseason. Someone that's able to give you 100 plus RBI year in and year out, does a good job moving the line, gives you a bit of power. Alex Bregman having one of his patented slow starts of the season, you expect that, but he's going to pick it up within the next few weeks. Yordan Alvarez, he's back to hitting big time clutch hits. David Hensley is a rookie that I really like for the team. Martin Maldonado, always a little bit of a dead bat, but pretty much past that. Even someone like a Chaz McCormick in the outfield, they're able to move the line, and for the Astros, this is the best bullpen in the big leagues. You had Ryan Presley, Ryan Stanek, Brian Abreu, Seth Martinez, Rafael Montero, Hector Neris, all provide sub 3.3 ERAs last season. For the Tigers, when you had guys like Michael Fulmer, Andrew Chafin in that bullpen, they were able to do a really good job. They are now bereft of that, as they're looking to someone like an Alex Lang, who last year, he was okay for the team with right around a 3.70 ERA, but Mason Englert are not guys that you're really able to trust in too much. Jose Cicero is relatively okay, but I think that the Tigers just completely outgunned in this spot. They were able to get that win on Monday, but now I think that the Astros restore order. I did set the Astros minus 125 on the run line, being able to get them at a minus 105, laying a run and a half. That appeals to me, and at a 7.5, going to be looking at the over as well. 961, 962 on the board. It is the Cleveland Guardians hitting the road face-off against the Oakland A's. Kyle Mueller is going to be going for the A's, and Hunter Gaddis is on the bump for Cleveland. Cleveland between a minus 120 to a minus 130 favorite, anywhere between plus 110 and plus 115. Your number on Oakland. 8 to 8.5 is your total on the 8. Overs between minus 110 to minus 120. The unders anywhere between even and minus 110 on the 8.5. Unders between minus 110 to minus 120. The overs anywhere between even and minus 110. And semi-total at an 8.8. I'm going to be looking at the over. This is a ballpark that it plays quite differently during the daytime rather than the nighttime, because during the nighttime in Oakland, marine layers out that takes a lot of balls that will be gone during the daytime and has some die at the warning track, so that helps when you've got two, shall we say, not so great pitchers, as Hunter Gaddis last year had an ERA that was an 18.41, I believe it was. When you have an ERA that is greater than the year that the Revolutionary War began, it's not so great, and he was able to bring it down a little bit with his start against Seattle to begin the season, but 4 runs in 3 2/3 innings, not necessarily a whole heck of a lot to be able to write home about. Now, the good news is the Guardians back him up with one of the best bullpens in the big leagues. If you're able to get to Aniel De Los Santos, James Karinchak, Emmanuel Clase, Eli Morgan, all these guys with a sub-3.3 ERA, Nick Sandlin, these guys are rock solid. Heck, yeah, you've been able to get some good innings as well out of someone even like a Trevor Stephen, but for the Oakland A's, they do have a little bit of an edge with their starting pitcher. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I like what I saw out of Kyle Mueller. First time out against the LA Angels. He gives up 1 run over the course of 5 innings. He was relatively solid in the AAA affiliate with the Atlanta Braves. Now, when he got starts during the 2022 season, not so great, 8.03 ERA, but that was a 3-start sample size. I am willing to forgive that. When he got more starts during the 2021 season, he wasn't great, he wasn't terrible, a little bit north of a 4 ERA. Now, the big thing for the Oakland A's is just trying to be able to put bat to ball. Being able to have Ramon Laureano back in the fold is big for the team. Pair of home runs entering into yesterday. He's off to a nice start to begin the season. And Tony Kemp, Shea Langolaris, Seth Brown are guys that are able to move the line. You don't have a lot of power with this lineup. You need Aces Aguilar to be able to drive them in. And when it came to August of 2021, he was actually leading the National League in terms of RBI, so he does have that capability, though he's a little bit longer in the tooth. And for the Cleveland Guardians, you just don't have a lot of power with this team. They were second to last in terms of home runs total in the big leagues last season. Now, Josh Naylor has already went deep a pair of times this season, and you do have a lot of guys that are able to get on base to turn those home runs into 2-run shots, 3-run shots. Andres Jimenez, Steven Kwan, Ahmed Rosario, Will Brennan, Jose Ramirez, all these guys had at least a 275 last season. You pick up Josh Bell in the offseason as well. Oscar Gonzalez is someone that's able to get on base. That's solid. So I do think that there's going to be runs aplenty in this spot, but I do think that Kyle Mueller is going to be able to do an okay job in this spot. I do think that he's going to be able to hold it down for the A's, and I do think that he outduels Hunter Gaddis, but when you get into the bullpen, that's really the Guardians' forte. Meanwhile, the A's have a few okay relievers, but they do lose A.J. Puck in the offseason. You still have Domingo Acevedo, who I like. I do like the fact that you bring back from last year Sam Mull as well, Danny Jimenez. These guys are relatively okay, but I do think that the Guardians, even if they're down a run or two, they are going to be able to rally in this ordeal, and I do think that both of these starters are going to give up some runs. I think the Cleveland going to be able to play some small ball to be able to get this one done. I did set the Guardians at a minus 134 on the money line, so getting them between minus 120 to a minus 130. Want to lay it anywhere between 8 and 8.5. Want to go over on either of those numbers. Set my total at an 8.8, 963, 964 on the betting board. The Seattle Mariners play OC LA Angels. Shohei Ohtani is going to be going for the Angels, and Chris Flexen is on the bump for Seattle. Seattle is an underdog between plus 122 and plus 130. And between minus 140 and minus 145, your number on the Angels, with 7 being the total. Overs between minus 115 and minus 125. Unders any between minus 105 and plus 105. And with the Angels. I made them minus 154 on the money line. I just really don't have a lot of faith in Chris Flexen. If you are taking a look at the run line, finding that only right around a plus 130. I know that it's chalky, but I would rather play it safe, and I would rather take the money line, and I would say play this one sooner rather than later. I do not see steam coming in on Chris Flexen. I know this is a very sharp take here for me, but I don't think that we're going to be having that, as Chris Flexen actually came on in long relief against the Cleveland Guardians on Friday. He went 4 innings, gave up 1 run, looked relatively solid there, and he's going to be pretty much the jack of all trades this year for the Seattle Mariners. We saw him sort of in that role towards the back half of last year, and with Chris Flexen, you know what to expect out of him. He is not going to go out there and light the world on fire. He's always going to give you fewer than 7 strikeouts per 9 innings. The big key for him is being able to keep the walks down, and that hurt him last year. He had north of 3 walks per 9 innings, and he had a 4.11 home ERA. He does give up quite a bit of contact in general, which means that ball's typically going to fly over the fence. He gave up right around 1.3 home runs per 9 innings at home last year. Meanwhile, for Shohei Ohtani, this guy is just absolutely amazing. Got the no decision that he did not deserve against the Oakland A's, punched out 10 in 6 scoreless innings to begin the season. And for Shohei Ohtani, towards the beginning part of his career, he did have some very demonstrative home and road pitching splits. And last year, they were still there, but by that I mean he had a .182 home ERA and a .292 ERA on the road, which if your top pitcher is pitching to a .292 ERA on the road, guess what? You're going to be able to take that. His walks per 9 rate was as low as ever last year at right around 2.4, so I like what I'm seeing there. And for the Angels, along with Mr. Ohtani, doing a great job at the plate already, a pair of home runs this season going into the game yesterday, you do have Taylor Ward. He entered into yesterday with 8 hits and 19 at-bats, a pair of bombs. He really had a nice start to the year last year, tapered off towards the back half of the season, but we've seen his potential under Renfroe as a 20-plus home run guy that should be able to hit about a 250 for the team. Mike Trout, we all know what he's capable of doing at the plate. Even someone like Luis Renifo has a little bit of power as well. And for the Seattle Mariners, they were third worst in terms of batting average in the league last year. They did address that by picking up Teoscar Hernandez, who had a combined 57 home runs and a .279 average last 2 years with the Toronto Blue Jays, but just on it in his first 5 games entering into yesterday, Colton Wong, he's always able to deliver some hits. He has hit at least a .249 in each out of the last 6 years. Ty France, Julio Rodriguez, you know what to expect out of both of these guys in terms of both average and power. And for Eugenio Suarez, the average is typically lacking a little bit. The power, there's never really a question about that, as he's had at least 30 home runs and now 4 out of the last 5 years. And the 1 year that he didn't was the 2020 COVID year. So he's been relatively rock solid with that regard. Only question is he going to be able to hit for average? That's a big question that you got for Cal Raleigh, aka Big Dumper as well. And if there is an attribute where the Mariners are going to have a big advantage, it is the bullpen. Andres Munoz, Penn Murphy, they both had sub-3 ERAs last season. You got really good production out of Matt Brash in the bullpen. Diego Castillo, a little bit of a roll of the dice, but by and large, guys like Paul Sewald are able to get it done. Meanwhile, Ryan Tepera, he's a big giant question mark for this bullpen. Matt Moore, he had a sub-2 ERA with the Rangers last year, but I've got my question marks here. Carlos Estevez has never really been that great, but I do think that Shohei Ohtani lends some good length. He's able to give a good start, and I just am not a believer in Chris Flexen. Did set my total at 7.1. Here at the 7, I am going to be willing to go over. I do think that the Angels get to Flexen, and this is a day game, so ball's going to be flying a little bit more in the Pacific Northwest than during a nighttime game, so looking at the over, and with the Angels, set them as a minus 154 on the money line, so going to look at a little bit of chalkier money line with the Halos and the over. 965, 966 on the board. The Toronto Blue Jays at the red face-off against the Kansas City Royals. Zach Greinke is going to be going for the Royals, and Alek Manoah is on the bump for Toronto, and the Blue Jays are anywhere between minus 170 to minus 180. Favorites anywhere between plus 150 and plus 160 is your number on Kansas City. 9 is the total. Under is anywhere between minus 110 and minus 115. The over is anywhere between minus 105 and minus 110. And with the Royals, I did set them as a plus 176 underdog. If you are taking a look at the run line of the Jays, you're going to be finding that at a minus 105. I was willing to go up to a minus 115. Don't see a real big edge with regards to the money line. And plus, I typically look to play a little bit more of a run line with either the favorite or take the underdog when it comes to these more demonstrative lines as well. So I'm going to to be looking at that Jays run line. Alek Manoah did struggle in his first time out, 5 runs given up in 3 1/3 innings against the Cardinals, but good news is he's now facing off against the Kansas City Royals. And the Kansas City Royals, I do like the upside of a lot of these guys in the fold. I do think that Ed Olivares, Bobby Witt Jr., Michael Massey, these are going to be really good hitters moving forward. But the big question is, what are you going to be able to get out of Salvador Perez after he was banged up last season? Because 2 years ago, this guy was one of the best hitters on the face of planet Earth with 48 home runs, hitting at 275, and had a big fall off last season. It's a Royals team that's kicking the tires on Franmil Reyes, who just has not been able to find himself in recent years, so we have seen the upside with him. I do think that someone like Nate Eaton is someone that could be relatively solid as well, but the Blue Jays just have this team completely outgunned. Going into the series, by the way, against St. Louis, they didn't hit a single home run despite the fact that they were putting up runs upon runs. Matt Chapman is off to a relatively odd start to the season, though. He can be a little bit cold with the bat. Bo Bichette, George Springer, these guys are able to do a nice job reaching base. They've got functional power, but they don't have the power of Vlad Guerrero Jr., who last 2 years he had a combined 80 home runs. He was able to have north of a 370 on base in that time span as well. This guy is incredible. Whit Merrifield is not someone that I'm necessarily too high on, and Kevin Kiermaier, Dalton Varsho, both of these guys are more defensive players, but Varsho able to do a good job of being able to get on base as well. And then with the Blue Jays, they've got the far better bullpen in the spot as well. Anthony Bass, Yimi Garcia, Adam Simber, Eric Swanson, all these guys are solid. And Swanson had a sub-2 ERA with Seattle last year. The Royals pick up Aroldis Chapman, which for their standards is good. Scott Barlow had a sub-3 ERA last year, but Amir Garrett has never really been that great. I'm going to call it what it is. Ryan Yarbrough is now being utilized as a reliever. He's never necessarily been too amazing. Taylor Clark is actually halfway decent. He's been better coming out of the bullpen, but I have my question marks with this Royals bullpen, and for Zach Greinke, he just gives up contact upon contact. This is not a guy that's going to go out there and get you a bunch of strikeouts. His 4 strikeouts in his season debut against the Minnesota Twins is actually very high for him, as he had a sub-6 strikeouts per 9 innings last year, but he was just very lucky at home last year. Gave up 1 home run in 66 innings. I know that he does a good job of being able to induce off contact, but when you get as few strikeouts as he does, the ball is going to be in the air that much, and it's going to be going upward. I do think that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to be able to tattoo him a little bit in this spot. Now, I did set my total at 8.4. I do expect a nice bounce back from a guy Manoah who had a sub-2.3 ERA on the road last year, so I'm going to be looking at the under. I think that the Blue Jays hold down a Royals lineup that has been somewhat shaky to begin the year, and with the Blue Jays, taking a look at them on the run line, 967, 968 on the betting board. The Philadelphia Phillies hit the red face-off against the New York Yankees. Garrett Cole is going to be going for the Yankees, and Aaron Supernola is on the bump for the Phillies, and the Phillies are between plus 118 and plus 130 underdogs. The Yankees are in between minus 133 and minus 150, with 7 being the total. Overs between minus 110 and minus 115, and the under, that is between minus 105 and minus 110. And with the Yankees, I did set them as a favorite in this ordeal of a minus 151. If you're taking a look at the run line of the Yankees, you're going to be finding that anywhere between plus 155 and plus 160. Needed at least a plus 152. I like just laying a little bit more juice in this spot. I recognize that Aaron Nola, throughout his career, has had some relatively demonstrative home and road splits. His road ERA is a little bit less than a point higher for his career than it is at home. He actually had a better road ERA than a home ERA last season. I don't think that that is going to be the case this season, and Nola did look a little bit out of sorts in that first start against the Texas Rangers, but still relatively solid pitcher. Garrett Cole, he just mowed him down in his first start against the San Francisco Giants. 6 scoreless innings, 11 strikeouts. He's very good at Yankee Stadium, but he does give up rockets as well, and we did see the Philadelphia Phillies be able to hit some bombs against the New York Yankees yesterday with Kyle Schwarber, Brandon Marsh being able to go deep, so that's a little bit of an issue. You've got Trey Turner, who does a good job of moving the line, though. The Philadelphia Phillies, they are still without Reese Hoskins right now. They're going to be without Bryce Harper for the beginning part of the season, so you're noticing guys like Jake Cave getting starts. Derek Hall is someone that I do like as well, but this Yankees team, they just have more firepower in general. Aaron Hicks, he got a start yesterday. I know that doesn't sit well with a lot of Yankees fans. I think he gets a little bit too much hate, but that's just me. But Giancarlo Stanton, he's become a little bit of an all-or-nothing player in his career. Only hit about a 225 last year, but hit a bunch of homers. We all know what Aaron Judge is capable of. Had a pair of home runs entering into yesterday in his first 4 games of the season. Was up for the Triple Crown last year as well. Not just that home run title. DJ turned it up LeMahieu. He's able to do a good job of moving the line, but bigger than what you're able to get out of Aaron Nola. What are you going to be able to get out of this Phillies bullpen? It has been a disaster to begin the season. Connor Brogdon and Andrew Bellotti have legitimately been some of your better relievers. They pick up Craig Kimbrell, who's terrible. You've been looking to Sir Anthony Dominguez, who was terrific towards back half of the season. I think that he's going to be able to pick it up, but he's off to a rough start. Andrew Vasquez has been trotted out there for some innings. You've got some question marks with this Yankees bullpen as well. You've got Clay Holmes, who had a rough end of the season last year, but I like Ron Manadakio, Jonathan Loaizaga, Wandy Peralta. These are guys that are relatively sure-handed, but if you have to go to someone like a Jimmy Cordero, that's not necessarily so ideal for the Yankees, but I do think that Garrett Cole right now is in better form than Aaron Nola, and I do certainly like this Yankees bullpen a little bit more than that of the Phillies. Can't really trust in the Yankees winning by multiple runs, but I did set my total at some point too. I do think that both of these guys are going to give up some runs. It is Yankee Stadium. I mean, even though it is cold, it is still a hitters-friendly ballpark with a lot of home runs being surrendered, and both of these guys, they are going to give up some rockets, so I do take a look at this total, and I do like it over, and with the Yankees, I'm willing to lay up to a minus 150 with them. 969, 970 on the betting board. The Tampa Bay Rays at the road face-off against the Washington Nationals. Patrick Corbin is going to be going for the Nats, and Shane McClanahan is on the bump for the Tampa Bay Rays. With the Rays, they are favorites of anywhere between minus 230 and minus 240, anywhere between plus 195 and plus 215 is your number on Washington. 8 is the total. Under is anywhere between minus 110 and minus 115. The over is between minus 105 and minus 110, and with the Tampa Bay Rays, I set them minus 238 on the money line, and if you're taking a look at the run line, find that at a minus 135. I was willing to go up to a minus 150. I just want absolutely no part whatsoever of our good friend Patrick Corbin. Both of these teams had to dive into the bullpen yesterday because both of these teams gave up 4 runs within the first 2 innings. Not great starts for either of them, but with the turkey tosser himself, he had 19 losses last year, and he's picking up right where he left off last season, giving up 3 runs over the course of 3 innings in his season debut. He's not sharp whatsoever. He gave up 3 walks in 3 innings. He's given up all sorts of contact, and for the Tampa Bay Rays, do they have a bunch of mashers? No. Jose Siri, though, is off to a relatively solid start. He got home run number 2 of the season yesterday, and you've got a lot of guys that they just give you professional at-bats. Wander Franco, Randy Arozarena, okay but not great power, but they do a good job of being able to move the line. Yandy Diaz and nearly a 400 on base last season. You did lose G-Man Choi in the offseason, but even someone like Harold Ramirez last year, he did a very nice job hitting about a 300 for this team. And for the Washington Nationals, it's not a bad lineup. It's not a great lineup by any stretch of the imagination, but Joey Meneses and a home run every 13 or so at-bats, hit above a 300 last year. Dominic Smith, he's someone that had a lot of promise and a lot of upside early on in his career, has not really lived up to that recently, but I like the pickup for the Washington Nationals. Jamier Candelario is someone that is not necessarily so great for this bunch, but Lane Thomas does an okay job of getting on base, and the Nationals don't have the world's worst bullpen, but it's badly used due to yesterday. You've got guys like Mason Thompson, Erasmo Ramirez, Carl Edwards Jr., no relation to Carl's Jr., who all provided a sub-3.5 ERA last year, but with the Rays, they just have arms upon arms. They always prep for spots like what we've got here, where they didn't necessarily get a lot of length yesterday. You've got so many guys like a Colin Pooch, Jason Adam, Jalen Beeks are able to give you multiple innings, hold down the fort, but I think that they're going to be able to get a nice start out of Shane McClanahan. McClanahan was banged up towards back half of the season last year, but I mean, through the first, we're going to call it 3 or 4 months of the season, he was the AL Cy Young leader, and he came out with a really good start against the Detroit Tigers with 6 scoreless innings. Now, it was against the Detroit Tigers, but still, this guy has been absolutely rock solid the last few years. Take a look at what he did last year, and he had a 2.08 road ERA. It was only 10 starts, but gave up about 1 home run per 9 innings. His command is relatively pinpoint, giving up about 2.1 walks per 9 innings. His strikeout numbers are really good, and I mean, there's just no comparing he and the turkey tosser himself and Patrick Corbin. I did set my total at a 7.7. Here at an 8, I'm going to be taking a look at the under. The Rays are not necessarily a masher of a team, and I think that they're going to be doing a lot of the offense all by themselves. I think that McClanahan going to tie up this Washington Nationals lineup. I'm going to be taking a look at the 8 under, and I'm looking at the run line with Washington. 971, 972 on the betting board. The Miami Marlins play host the Minnesota Twins. Pablo Lopez goes for the Twins, and Jesus Luzardo is on the bump for Miami. Both of these teams are in a pick'em game. You're finding both anywhere between even money and minus 110. And the total is a 7. The over is between minus 110 and minus 115. The under is any between minus 105 and minus 110. And with the Miami Marlins, I did set them as the minus 108 favorite. So I'm going to be willing to dive in on the Miami Marlins in this spot on a rather pick-em line. Jesus Luzardo looked really good in his first start, 5 2/3 innings scoreless against the New York Mets. And this guy is really good stuff. Does need to tame down the walks a little bit. Last year, his walks per 9 rate was in the neighborhood about 3.25, but he did a good job of being able to lessen that hard contact, giving up less than a home run per 9 innings. And strangely, he was far worse at home than he was on the road. A 2.64 road ERA compared to a 4.25 home ERA. Considering how pitcher-friendly Miami is, I do think that that's going to be going upward. And guess who knows a little bit about pitching in Miami? Juan Pablo Lopez, as he pitched for them last year. And when he was in Miami last year, he was able to do a relatively brutal job. 4.55 ERA at home compared to a 3 ERA on the road, which I find to be, once again, very, very strange. And I do think the fact that there are going to be some Miami Marlins hitters, they're going to be able to pick up on him. That is a little bit of an edge for Miami. Now, Miami does have a little bit of a new look lineup from last year, and they were dealing with a bunch of injuries, but guys like Garrett Cooper, Jazz Chisholm, Jorge Soler, they all know what to expect. They pick up Luis Arias along with Gene Segura in the offseason, and Arias entered into yesterday having had hits in 11 out of his first 21 at-bats. Not a guy that is going to give you a lot of power, but hit above a 300 last year. Avicio Garcia, he might be a little bit more of a power bat for the team, but with the Miami Marlins, this is going to be a team that they're going to be looking to play a lot of station-to-station small ball. Meanwhile, for the Minnesota Twins, they're very similar in that regard as well. They did pick up Joey Gallo, who's got 3 home runs in his first 4 games of the season. I think that that's going to be tapering off a little bit. Max Kepler just has not been able to find himself in recent years. Michael A. Taylor is more out there for his defense, but Jose Miranda, nearly a 350 on base last year. Byron Buxton is able to get it going with regards to power, but he was all sorts of banged up last year, which really hurt his average. He should be back to form. Carlos Correa, a good but not great power hitter that does an amazing job of getting on base. And the Twins, they are going to have the upper hand with their bullpen. Emilio Pagan is absolutely terrible, but Yohan Duran, he's one of the best closers in the big leagues for my money. Ode Lopez, Ode Alcala, these guys are solid. Giovanni Morin last year had a sub-3 ERA, and for Miami, you've got some question marks, though. They did pick up JT Trigua along with AJ Puck. I like both of those acquisitions to the offseason, but Dylan Floro, Matt Barnes, Oscar Brazoban, not necessarily what you want to be latching onto, but I do think that Luzardo going to give a good start, and I do think that with Pablo Lopez, the fact that he is going up against his former team, that is going to give the Miami Marlins a little bit of a leg up. I do think that both of these guys go out there, wind a relatively solid start. I did set my total at 6.8, very pitcher-friendly ballpark in Miami. I'm going to be looking at the under. I think that both of these guys who struggled in Miami last year are going to be doing for some positive progression. So I'm going to be taking a look at the under in this spot, and in this ordeal, I did set the Miami Marlins at a minus 108, so I'm willing to take them on this pick'em line. 973, 974 on the betting board. The Boston Red Sox play as the Pittsburgh Pirates. As walk at the plate for the Pirates, it's Mitch Keller, and Corey Kluber is going to be on the bump for Boston. Boston, and between minus 140 and minus 155 favorites, between plus 120 and plus 135, your number on Pittsburgh, with 9 to 9.5 being your total on the 9. Over is minus 120, and the under is even on the 9.5. Under is minus 120, and the over is even. And with the Boston Red Sox, I did set them as a favorite of minus 182. If you're taking a look at the run line, you're getting that at a plus 135. I was willing to lay a price on the run line, so I am in on the Boston Red Sox in this spot. It's been a little bit of a rough start for their pitching. Hitting has been there. Going into yesterday, the Boston Red Sox, in every one of their games to start out the year, first 4 games, they had gotten to at least 6 runs in every one of them. Rafael Devers, Alex Verdugo, Adam Duvall, all had at least 8 hits in their first 4 games. So Duvall just, it feels like this ballpark is so ideal for him. He had some great years with the Cincinnati Reds, had a fall off after he left there, but it feels like he's back and in full force. Acquisition from Japan and Yasutaka Yoshida's looked relatively solid. Justin Turner down for what is able to move the line. Kike Hernandez has started out the year with a pair of homers. Both of these teams do not have good bullpens. For the Pittsburgh Pirates, David Benhart is someone that's able to give you a nice inning, and Chase Young, he was actually good as a long guy last year. For the Young, I wish that they would give him a little bit more of a crack at starting once again at 2.64 ERA coming out of the bullpen, but guys like Torey Moreta, Dwayne Underwood Jr., Colin Holderman, Jose Hernandez, this is not a good bullpen. And for the Boston Red Sox, yeah, Kenley Jansen had 41 saves last year, but if you've ever been a part of a bet that relies upon Kenley Jansen to get you a scoreless inning. You know the sweats that you go through there. Chris Martin has had a little bit of a career rebirth, was good with the LA Dodgers last year, but Caleb Ward, along with Zach Kelly, they were just terrible last year. John Schreiber is relatively solid in this bullpen, but Richard Blyer, don't have a lot of faith in him. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates, this is a little bit of an all-or-nothing lineup. Oneil Cruz has the potential to be a 30-plus home run guy, but he's got the potential to strike out 200 times as well. Andrew McCutchen, Brian Reynolds, they do an okay job of moving the line, and Reynolds off to a very good start. 4 home runs this season. I really like what he's able to provide, but what are you able to get behind him out of someone like a Jason DeLay, Cannon Smith, and Jigba? Guys like this, those are the big question marks. They pick up Carlos Santana. He has not been good for many, many years, and I do think that Corey Kluber going to have a better start than he did at the beginning part of the season. For the Klubot, he always does a good job with his command. Fewer than 2 walks per 9 innings last year. Now, he does give up some hard contact, and Boston is not necessarily the world's greatest ballpark for being able to control that. You take a look at 2022, and when he was away from Tampa Bay, he was giving up right around 1.3 home runs per 9 innings. Command once again was there, but opponents hit a 292 off of him away from Tampa, right around a 5.05 ERA. And for Mitch Keller, he was able to pick up some velocity on his fastball. I like the way they looked in spring training. Came out and gave a little bit of a dud against the Cincinnati Reds, giving up 4 runs in 4 2/3 innings. So I will say, since the back half of 2022 has been round into form, 4.13 ERA on the road last year. He was able to do a good job with being able to induce soft contact, but still has a ways to go in terms of command. He had nearly 4 walks per 9 innings, and going up against this fearsome Boston Red Sox lineup, I think that's going to be rough. I did set my total at 9.2. I'm mostly looking at 9s. Would like to see that juice get a little bit lower, but in this ordeal, as of right now, I'd be looking at a 9 over. If we get to 9.5, pretty much across the board, because the only 9.5 I'm seeing is at DraftKings, I would be willing to take that 9.5 under. And with the Boston Red Sox, I'm going to be looking at them laying a 1.5 on the run line at a plus price. And we wrap things up with 975, 976 on the betting board. The Chicago White Sox play us the San Francisco Giants. Logan Webb goes for the Giants. Dylan Cease and Decease is on the bump for the White Sox. White Sox between a minus 128 and a minus 135 favorite, and between plus 115 and plus 122, your number on the Giants. The total is 7.5 with the over and the under both at minus 110. Did set my total at 6.8. I'm going to be looking at the under. I recognize that Wrigley Field oftentimes has the biggest wind advantages / disadvantages, but this ballpark is out there in the Windy City as well. And for the Chicago White Sox, they are going to be playing in some cooler conditions, and Dylan Cease has been able to do a masterful job in recent years. Walks can sometimes get high. He had nearly 4 walks per 9 innings last season, but he does a good job of being able to limit the deep ball, giving up right around 0.8 home runs per 9 innings last year. Strikeouts per 9 rate was north of 10.5. This guy is very dominant, with opponents hitting $190 off of him. Now the Giants, they do a good job of being able to scheme a lot of things up, being able to have good platoon splits, and that is something that is very beneficial. And they are coming off of a day off, so both of these bullpens are going to be relatively rested. You've got Jock Peterson along with Michael Conforto in the outfield. These two guys are going to be relied upon heavily for power, and Peterson and Conforto combined 3 home runs to begin the season. You like to see that. They're also able to get a pair of home runs to begin the campaign out of Davey VR as well, so some nice upside there. Mike Yastrzemski looks like he's back to hitting for a little bit of a higher average than he did a season ago, but catcher spot ever since Buster Posey left the fold, that is a big giant question mark for the team. They were relying upon Joey Bart, but he hasn't been able to come along for 1 and 2. He's been a little bit banged up. Meanwhile, for the Chicago White Sox, you don't have that one guy in the roster really other than Eloy Jimenez, who's been banged up through his career, that is necessarily the biggest of the big power hitters, but you've got a lot of guys that they move the line. Tim Anderson, Luis Robert, Andrew Benintendi, all guys I expected above a 275 this year. Elvis Andrus off to a rough start this year, but when he was traded away from Oakland to the White Sox, gave the team a nice jolt of life last season. I like the way that Andrew Vaughn has looked to begin the season as well. Last year he supplied about 17 home runs at about a 270. I think that he's going to see a nice jump in his numbers, and both of these bullpens do have their question marks, especially with the White Sox. Very unfortunate situation with Liam Hendricks going through cancer, but with the White Sox, still have Aaron Bummer, Kendall Graveman. These guys are able to get the job done. Jake Diekman is a little bit hit or miss, but Reynaldo Lopez, Jimmy Lambert, both had sub 3.3 ERAs, so I like them. And for the Giants, it is Rogers Square. Taylor and Tyler Rogers are both in the neighborhood, and both of these guys are very soft tossers. John Brebbia is someone that you don't necessarily want to rely upon. Scott Alexander is a guy that I'm always perplexed by. Last year, he was with the Giants for just a very limited amount of time. His ERA the last few years has been solid, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy the last few years as well, so that's a little bit of an issue. So I do find it to be very fascinating what you're able to get out of that bullpen. I do think that Logan Webb going to be able to turn a relatively solid start. I know that Danny was talking about his home and road splits. Those were really 2 years ago. 2 years ago, he had a 4.08 road ERA compared to a .96 ERA at home. In 2022, it was much more equal. 2.89 road ERA compared to 2.91 home ERA. So it was very, very minuscule, but he was actually a little bit better on the road. His home runs per 9 rate was about a half a home run per 9. Not necessarily the biggest swing and miss guy, but is someone that does a good job not hurting himself, doesn't give up a lot of walks, and I do think that the ball not going to be flying on this day. I do think that both of these pitchers do a relatively solid job, but I like the White Sox lineup and the bullpen behind Cease a little bit more, which is why I did set my line at a -138. Do not want to mess around with the run line with these two pitchers going down, but that said, I'm going to be willing to take the White Sox on the money line up to a -138, and with my total set it at a 6.8, so diving under as well, and that will wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN family podcast. A big thanks to Danny Burke. Does great work here at VSiN. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you've got a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter timeline at @JNet_81. Keep in mind, letters CM. Naming does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via the 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the baseball season, which means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.